The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies.
It's Friday, August 10th, Saturday, August 11th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the extremely smoky mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network and Deep Talk Radio, and we say thank you to all of you tuning us in to kick off your weekend. If you want to check out our archives, they're free. All you got to do is go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, tickets are officially on sale for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio, September 28th through 30th. All you got to do is go to questers.ca. Click on the fall conference, scroll on down. You can get your tickets right there. It's going to be a great weekend. Grant Cameron, Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, Paisley Town, Michael W. Hall, Mike Morin, Eric Cooper, and more will be there. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel NSUHO. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the NSUHO banner, and subscribe to the channel today. Tonight on the show, we bring in a new voice on disclosure and consciousness to you, as Sebastien Martin is here from NSUHO, a proud sponsor of Spaced Out Radio. NSUHO, you will learn, is the name that came from another world after a visitation with extraterrestrials, which helped lead Sebastien on his path from businessman to the studies of off-world contact. Sebastian's website is nsuho.com. That's spelled NSUHO. NSUHO.com, and his YouTube channel goes by the same name. And we will have Sebastien come in and discuss the possibility of ET contact with some of the top researchers in the field, along with some who don't really want to be named because their governmental positions just wouldn't allow for such public conversations. Living on Vancouver Island, Sebastien, when not playing the role of husband and father, is usually searching for the truth to the answers that come from the stars. What those answers aren't so clear as of yet, but he's hopeful one day the truth will be set free. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, Everett Themer is back with the Encounters version of Faux News Friday, where we take a look at the fake news of the week. Sebastien Martin, my good friend, it is so glad and so much a proud moment for me to have you on the air with us on Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much, Dave, for having me. And what a great presentation.
Well, you know, you got nice hair, so I have to make sure that the intro matches your hair.
Yes, especially on the audio. I'm just trying to sort out my technical difficulties with my computer, trying to hook up on my laptops instead of doing it on the phone. But I will be able to, carry on this conversation as is right now. If it doesn't really get fixed, it's okay.
Not a problem, my friend. Not a problem. Sebastien, you are someone who kind of quietly has been delving into the entire field of disclosure, and you have made some incredible contacts. People may not know who you are as of yet. And I say that very key, as of yet. But let's learn a little bit about your experiences for our audience here as to how you ended up creating NSUHO.
Okay. Well, NSUHO, thank you, is actually the name coming from Africa. It's an older tribe of Africa that means consciousness. And I was looking for a key word that was short. And to me, the word NSUHO resonated very well, even if it's hard to pronounce and, probably not the smartest and best marketing tool that I could come up with, but it was good for me. And it was based on the idea that, my business, which was around my wife's family name, Weatherspoon, which is like a very difficult name to pronounce or even write. And we still managed to build a multi-million-dollar company as a multinational around that name, which is now like a staple name in the honey industry. And so I always made sure that we could prevail despite the name that we chose. And I think, if you have a good product or a good service, you can, the name is just an add-on. But in my case, NSUHO is something that really spoke to me, and I just wanted to use it to promote my website and to do with consciousness. And, this was the original message that I got from what I believe were the first ETs that contacted me. And I say first because I had multiple encounters, both physical and through hypnosis as well. Like I basically just realized that there were more out there than I even imagined. But the original encounter I had was based in Duncan, on Vancouver Island, and that was in November of 2011. And one morning I woke up and I had a very strange dream of this being that had very big eyes, and he had a great smile. He reminded me of a surfer dude with wavy hair, but I could only see his bust, so I couldn't really tell if he was humanoid. I mean, he was humanoid, but he was definitely not human-like in a way. Like he had definitely features that were not resembling of ours. The eyes were like 3 times the size of our human eyes. The cheekbones were extremely high compared to any other species that were even evolving on this planet before. And the smile was very, unusual in a way that not only the teeth were extremely white, but it was very unnatural. It's almost something that this being has learned. It wasn't really dawning on me at first, but when I woke up in the morning, I remembered his face, and he just would not leave me for the whole day. So I went to work, and his face would still be right in front of me all day long, and I could not shake him off. And so when I came back home at night, I decided to just relax and sit down on my sofa for a few seconds. I just poured myself chamomile tea in my kitchen, and when I sat down, I just realized that there was this whirlwind of energy going around me counterclockwise. And then the movement stopped. And when I opened my eyes, this being was standing up right in front of me, just in front of my library, and he was in physical form. I could not see my books behind him. And I completely was astonished by this, sight. It was the being that showed up in my dream at night, and then when I saw him in the morning, he was there, and with the same bright smile. And I was so frozen that I basically could not move. My eyelids, my hands, my whole body, I could not open my mouth. But in my head, not only I was slightly panicking over this, thinking maybe I should just, act and, protect my household out of this stranger. And so in my head, I was thinking, what are you doing here? Who are you? And the first thing that basically engulfed me was this peace. And I was thinking, it's okay, don't worry, it's all fine. And he introduced himself as Zoar, like Z-O-A-R. And he said he was from the Galactic Alliance. He never said he was Pleiadian, but after the research I did on such beings, everything concluded that he was a Pleiadian being. And I think a lot of your audience know what Pleiadians are. And the reason why I said that is because not only he had like a blue halo around him, but he also was wearing this blue outfit, very tight-fitting. And when I looked online, those kind of blues or even Nordics, were wearing those kind of outfits. So I assumed that he was one of those. And the revelations tonight, and I was discussing it just early on in the week, because this is a kind of new revelations to me. I realized that this being was not who he seemed to be. Like he was not a demon or anything else, but he was not a Pleiadian. And even if I had some other encounters down the line, and I just had hypnosis sessions to find out about my anxiety attacks I had, because I had countless visions as well, since I was a child, but also due to the my wife got pregnant in 2009, and from that moment, my visions came back in full force. Because for 10 years, while doing my business and so on, I was letting that go. My wife was afraid by those visions, and she told me to just stay away from them and not share anything with her. And then in 2009, everything changed. When she became pregnant, they came back in full force, like 3 visions a day. A day, at night, it doesn't matter when it was constant. And it was extremely overwhelming to me because I had no control over them. They were coming, going whenever they liked. And some of those visions were very powerful. I was talking about, cataclysmic events, and sometimes like related to the people I knew. And so when I was having those visions, I decided to consult with a clinical hypnotherapist who was working for an hospital and helping people stop smoking cigarettes. And, with pregnancy, she was helping with very various things, but not aliens or, visions. So when I approached her, this woman was basically, open with the idea of helping me with my visions the same way she would be helping someone stopping smoking cigarettes, for example. So she said, if you want to stop your visions, it's up to you. You might want to control them, or you might want to erase them. And because I had some very good positive visions in my life, seeing the birth of my child and my children afterwards. I thought, well, maybe it would be nice to keep and being able to control them, so they would not be coming up whenever they wanted to come. And so this is what led me to book my first appointment. And a week later, Zoe showed up in my living room. So, my appointment was about visions, not about, ET encounters. So I didn't want to spook my therapist with it. And I basically decided to keep it away from her, despite this powerful experience that, felt like I was doing this conversation with that being for like 15 minutes in my living room. But in fact, when he vanished, like in a haze, and I went back to my kitchen to grab my cup of tea there, I just realized that when I was sipping it, all along thinking I was losing my mind because I was looking at the floor, and I still remember to this day my reaction, thinking, I've lost it. That's it. I made it up, or I just turned crazy, or something like that. I could not accept the idea of having this being in my living room and having this extraordinary experience, especially when I was not into that realm before. To me, in the past, if you talk to me about, ETs or, disclosure or anything else, I would have thought that people were just swimming with dolphins. I was not taking it seriously because none of these things to me were something that I've experienced. I've experienced visions, okay, but nothing else. So to me, the ET realm was completely obscure and, non-existent in my life. I didn't know anything about it. So when I decided to meet with a therapist and realizing that I'm kind of jumping all around here, but when I drank my cup of tea, I just realized that I had 2 hours of missing time when I thought the conversation was about 15 minutes. So that kind of shocked me as well, because I had this, amount of time that vanished, and I never tried to look back as to what this missing time was spent. If it was talking to him or going on the spaceship or, receiving more downloads, it's hard to say. It was, I guess, the download idea was more likely because of what I've experienced afterwards. But the idea of seeing the therapist was mostly to deal with the anxiety attacks I had, because it was disturbing me in my work and I could not function as a CEO of a multinational. And therefore, when I sat down with her, I discussed my visions, and the first thing she said to me was, well, let's try and find out where they came from and when they first started and when they were the most prevalent in your life. And this is when I said, well, around the age of 16 years old, I was in France. I was in a school, in a boarding school that my dad sent me to as a punishment to begin with. And then I loved it. But while I was there, that's when I had automatic writing. I had visions, out-of-body experiences. I had an incredible amount of, remote viewing sessions that I didn't know what it was. I could not even say it was remote viewing at the time because I didn't have the verbiage to describe it. But I was using meditation. So one might say, how did you know meditation at the age of 14 or 15 or 16? Well, that's because my mother, when my dad and my mom split up when I was 7 years old, decided to become a Buddhist. And I always frowned at the idea of this because I didn't have any experiences to do with that. And my mother tried to teach me how to meditate using transcendental meditation at the age of 8 years old. And so I had my first mantra given to me, and for years I had no visions, no insights, nothing whatsoever happening from those meditations on a daily basis. And I was trying to do it thoroughly on a daily basis using the same mantras, but I could not achieve anything. And then one day I thought, well, maybe I could use my mantra and using the techniques of transcendental meditation to come out of my body and impress a girl that I liked at the time. And so we played a game. And I said, let's do a game, and I would like you to place an object on your night table tonight. And she was also in a boarding school in a girls' dorm, and I was in the boys' dorm. And I said, tonight I'll just be visiting your bedroom and seeing what you placed on your night table, and tomorrow morning I'll tell you what it is. And so she actually placed 3 objects instead of 1, to trick me. And I was, very successful at doing this out-of-body experience or remote viewing sections. It was hard for me to describe what it was. All I knew was I was focusing on this location, her specifically, because I knew her. I didn't know her bedroom either. I don't know where she was exactly in the building, but I had a general sense of it. And I basically used my mantra, but instead of sitting up like we do in transcendental meditation, I was laying down. And then I came out of my body. I felt I was definitely coming out of my body at such a high speed that I blacked out. And I went through this, tunnel, like dark tunnel. And I could describe it the same way as I had more experiences in the future, like about remote viewing. And that's a very strange connotation, but the experience of coming out of my body and going through this tunnel and then hovering over the night table and seeing those objects right away was so clear that I was there. I could feel the air. I was in the room, but my attention was specifically orientated towards these objects and nothing else. It was like having blinders, like from like a horse, and that's what I was seeing. Then as soon as I could describe those objects so clearly, then I could feel myself being sucked back into my body. And at a very high speed as well, in darkness, same idea. And then when I opened my eyes, I was sweating profusely and I was scared. And I realized that I could not move from my bed. And it took me a while to get up and promise myself that I would never do that again. And then the next day, I just told the girl that, I saw those objects. And instead of confirming it, she just turned white, like pale as a ghost. And she never wanted to talk about this event for over 20 years. And I'm still in touch with her, to this day. And after going to France with my wife and my kids, we met and with her husband, and we had a dinner, and then we discussed that event, and I wanted her to confirm it. And she said to me, yes, I can confirm it, but the fact is that you described the object that my dad gave me before he passed away, and I never wore it at school. Always left it in my drawer, and always left it, next to my bed at night as a reminder. And she was very religious as well, and so that was the confirmation I was waiting for. I kind of knew all along, but I guess I wanted her to say it. And
Sebastian, can I cut in for a quick second here? As a child, did you have any experiences whatsoever, or did this just kind of come out of the blue for you like it has for so many people since around the 2010 timeline?
No. I had visions since I was probably like 9 years old. I basically remember being in my parents' car, driving and anticipating an event that would happen on the road. And like basic events, like, a bird would fly out of a tree, or, would just come out behind a building, such things like that. And after, it was so frequent that I, asked questions about it, even to my family. And they were not believers, and none of that was making sense to them. They were saying, well, it's like having a déjà vu, in French as well. Saying, you probably were like batting your eyelashes and you just believe that you saw that, but it's not unusual. A lot of people have that. So I just basically said, okay, well, whatever. I didn't even try to look into it because it was not, supported in a way. But regardless, I still had those interests, in terms of visions. And even if I never dwelled into the topic or wanted to make a profession out of it, I certainly had an ease, with those kind of visions. And my classmates, for example, knew about this because when I was 16, I had this very clear vision in broad daylight from this girl in my class who I saw her on a red scooter. She was leaving the school, and she was being hit by a car on the right-hand side. and I could describe the event so clearly, and I saw her dead. And so I wrote it down on a piece of paper, not knowing what to do with it, and I was very clumsy about it at the time. And I decided to, tell her what could happen. I didn't know the date of it, but it felt pretty, soon. So I thought, well, that had to be addressed. Anyway, she got angry, asked, who did this, and I said it was me. And then, she got mad with me for a bit, and then just, vanished. And then a year later, this vision, which I saw in my Spanish class, happened exactly the way I described it. But she didn't die. She became paraplegic. And her best friends, when they came back to class, they basically looked at me like I was, not a weirdo, but, there was something off. Like they were angry at me, and at the same time, they were fearful of me at the same time. It was a very strange feeling that I felt like I was like an outcast. And it's a shame because I was very good at sports in those days, and I was very active, and I had lots of friends. So it's not like I was an outsider. And, while this kind of feeling went away very quickly, it always stayed with me. And I thought, I should really keep it to myself, or I should be very careful in disclosing such things. Now, the interesting point about this accident is that the man who caused the accident was my Spanish teacher. So I had the vision in his class with my classmate, and he was the cause of it. So it was not just random. It happened for a reason. And I didn't know any better at the time, but that's basically the outcome of the accident. And a lot of these prophetic visions, let's say, have been very detailed, clear, and it was not just an idea of looking at them and thinking I'm just imagining or creating a storyline about it. It's very clear. It's like a movie. I'm seeing things so clearly that it happens. It's not an interpretation of some sort. Many people doing remote viewing as well, are doing interpretation work. They just get some details about, this is a tree, and they get a good feeling or a good sense of things, but it's not very, very clear like a movie. The way I'm seeing it is an actual movie, in remote viewing or with visions. It works exactly the same way for me. And which is very, very unlike what people are being trained on doing. And so the visions were addressed by the therapeutic hypnotherapist individual that I work with, and very quickly she made me go back to the age of 16 years old. And I thought that I would be addressing the visions, but to my surprise, I just realized that I saw myself on the school grounds outside at night, looking at the building of my dorm, and I was fully dressed, and I saw myself lifting the ground, and so my feet were leaving the ground, and all of a sudden, the therapist asked me to look around, and I said, "Well, I'm being tilted on my back," and so I came feet first into this oval UFO, and there was a rectangular shape door on the side of it, and it was very bright on the inside, and I came in feet first, and inside the spacecraft was a few tall gray aliens. So they were not the short little grays, they were the tall ones with the long arms, like longer than human arms, with very long fingers, and they had the black eyes and with a pipe hole for the mouth, and they right away they basically hooked me up with IVs and a helmet. I didn't know what the helmet was all about, but while they were doing this, and they stopped, and then they started to argue with each other, and then everything stopped. And so the hypnotherapist stopped the session altogether, and she kind of panicked because she told me that she was not prepared to hear this, and neither did I. But at the time, she said to me, "I need to research it. I need to know what's going on with this, and then I can help you further." And so that's exactly what happened. A week later, we came back to the same session, and I repeated exactly the same abduction situation, exactly the same way. And when the the tall grays started to argue with each other with a guttural sound that sounded like roar, 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 roar. Then I asked them what they were arguing about, and they said, we can't touch you because you've been tampered with. Now, none of that was, said with, we were not communicating verbally. It was telepathically, obviously. And when they were talking to me at the time, that was based on what the hypnotherapy suggested me to do, to ask them the question when I believed that I could not speak to them because they spoke a different language. And I've learned about the subconscious and, all the possibilities behind that, to the extent that I was able to go back in time, ask them a question that I may not have asked them at the time because I had no memory of it. But then when I asked them what that meant, they stayed quiet. And so the therapist suggested to ask them if they could explain or show me what those that being tampered with meant. And they showed me some symbols, like holographic symbols in front of me and between them and me. And I basically wrote them down on a piece of paper for the hypnotherapist. And then she asked me, well, do they mean anything to you? And I said, no, they don't. So then she asked me to ask them what those symbols meant. And once again, they didn't say anything. And afterwards, she said something that completely changed my mind about hypnotherapy, because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe the therapy worked to the extent that I never really believed that hypnosis meant to be that way. Like, I was remembering everything from what we're discussing was very vivid, very, I was in control in a way, but it was too real to be something from my past. So I believe that I just made it up. I had a very creative imagination. And so while I was kind of almost seeing a movie in front of my eyes and I was describing it to the therapist, what changed my mind was when they said to me, when I asked them if they could show me where I've seen those symbols before, then that's when I changed my mind, because I blacked out under hypnosis and I went backwards in time, going backwards in the darkness. And then when I opened my eyes under hypnosis, I saw my hands as a baby. And the scene that followed was so unusual that it completely changed my mind about the experience, because it was so clear and I was describing a scene that was out of this world, literally. I mean, basically I was in a cylinder with a black goo liquid. I say black goo, but it was not black goo. It was actually a very intelligent liquid that was soft as silk, and it was all over my body. I still could see my hands, but I could not see my body. And I was there was a dome over me, and I could see those letters on the side of on the rim of the cylinder to attach the dome, the glass dome, with the metal part that was where I was laying in. And those symbols were omega symbols upside down. And while I was seeing those beings through the glass, they were not very clear. I could see two beings. I could see like some shadows, but there was nothing very clear. So she said to me, can you come out of your body to see where you are? These were the exact terms she used. And instead, I basically followed her, a question literally. I came out of my body and I described the next scene, saying everything is dark around me and I can see a spacecraft beneath me that's about 6 miles long, and it's all cubic. And I know exactly where I am on the inside of the spacecraft, and is the Earth underneath it. And so she panicked and she asked me to come back into my body. And that's what I did. And then she said to me, well, when I've asked you to come out of your body, I meant to stay in a room. So then I did that the next time around, and then I started to describe the room, with the colors of the ground and the walls. So there was like greens and orange, and there was everything on the inside was very unlike the outside. In a way that everything was oval shape or curved. There was no real nothing was really straightforward. The door was slightly metallic as well, I think. But everything else felt alive in a way, like the craft was part of the beings, and they were, and vice versa. And then I saw those beings inside the craft, those two big, giants that basically looked like Pleiadians to me. There was a man and a woman, and the man had a beard, and he was wearing this kind of crown that it was not a crown, but more of like a helmet idea, but it was not covering his head completely. His hair was still going through it, and there was this trident symbol on his forehead with a round curve on the peaks. So it was not like an exact trident, but this is the symbol I saw, and they had the same eyes as Zor, the being that I saw in my living room. And the woman and the man were at the same height, and they were both wearing the same uniform, which was the blue uniform that I saw with Zor, but this time around, they had this insignia on their chest that was an upside-down triangle. So the base was on the top with a point at the bottom, and there were 3 black dots on each point of the triangle. And that's one of the symbols that the tall gray aliens showed me as holograms. So everything, fell into place during that hypnosis session very quickly, very clearly. And that's when I thought, I'm not making this up. There's no way I can make this up so clearly and so well. I could write a novel about it. It's so well done, and so I should be doing this so more often. But, it's just a confirmation that I had that felt so true. And the reason why I felt so overwhelmed by the whole experience is because when I saw myself as a baby, especially, and I felt the vulnerability of a baby, I felt vulnerable, very, I was basically just, useless and helpless. And, if they could have done anything to me, I would have not been able to defend myself. And I remember that my parents used to tell me that when I was growing up, I had this autoimmune deficiency where I had this or these missing proteins in my DNA. And so when I first grew up, starting from birth, I've lost the first layer of my epidermia from my skin. And so it fell off, and then it took 6 months to regenerate out of the blue. And so while they gave a name called Lenner-Mussus, and that disease or genetic disease is quite known. It's a rare disease that affects, a few people around the world today. But in France at the time, when I had it, they only had like 1 case known from the 1800s. And so it was a very rare condition that they had a very hard time to discuss. And they said, well, based on what we know of the situation and these cases in other countries, that child will be, growing up to be, 5'3", very short, because you will be suffering from a major issues growing up, and I basically managed to defeat all of these symptoms that condition was supposed to be about. So, and that kind of happened at 6 months old when everything came back to normal out of the blue, because there was no medication for it. There was nothing they could have done. It just came back by itself. And so they were kind of surprised by it at the time, but, my family would not talk about it because they were very traumatized by the whole thing. It was something that they had a very hard time with, and the marriage actually suffered from that down the line. Even if it was not the cause of the divorce, it wasn't helping, and that's the side effects of having a troubled child and having a rocky relationship to begin with. It doesn't help. So,
Sebastian,
I have to say that
I got a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. I hate to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But in regards to these symbols that these tall grays were showing you, what did they look like? And is there anything on Earth that would represent these exact symbols?
The other 2 symbols, I only have seen 3 symbols, and the first symbol that I saw was that upside down triangle with the 3 black dots. The second one was a staff it almost like looked like a wooden staff with something on top, and I still don't know what that is. And then the third symbol was like a 7-pointed star that was quite elaborate looking. And once again, I don't really know what that means. So I saw the symbols, and the only one that really caught my attention was that upside-down triangle on those beings' chest, because they were wearing it, and that made sense. So that was the only confirmation I had from the symbol they showed me. On the other hand, when I was 16 and I did the automatic writing, I used to feel books and books of the same language that I had no idea about. It was a foreign language or an alien language, most likely. I kept writing it from top to bottom, from left to right. So I was doing these lines of symbols like this, page after page, and I was in trance for like 2 hours straight doing this and repeatedly doing it without knowing why and why I was so obsessed by it. And then it stopped. But at one point when I was 16, I used to do this all the time. And I don't know if it was related to them or something else. It was hard to say. I still don't know the answer to that.
And in regards to, and this leads to Char's question here, to how they tampered with you. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by they tampered with you?
Well, I'm assuming, and what I've learned over time is that I had a protein like DNA deficiency, and the black liquid that was in that cylinder was here to help me to fix the problem. Why they had to intervene at the time, I had no idea. I basically saw the experience, and I felt that connection. I just realized that this was the purpose of this intervention. As to know why me, I don't know. I didn't know at the time, and I only discovered that down the line. But this was the main reason why they abducted me when I was a baby. I guess they had a plan for me, or they wanted me to be healed from what I had. And I don't know, why I had that issue to begin with. When I was born, I was also with a twin. So my twin was not quite a twin. What happened was my mother got pregnant, and then 5 weeks later, she became pregnant with me. So she had two fetuses, but being generated at two different times, which is kind of unusual, but it's rare, but it's not impossible. I thought it was, but it's not, and that's called superfetation, when you have two fetuses basically created at 5 weeks apart, and usually one of them dies. It's not really something that that mother could carry, because it's such an issue that in animals it happens all the time, and that's okay, it happens. But in human beings, usually one of the fetuses dies prematurely or in the womb, and that's exactly what happened in my case. So I survived, and the other fetus died. And when my mother realized that, and the doctors realized that, they basically had to dry or mummify the other fetus so it could not affect me growing up. And I was delivered at term at 9 months. But during that time, they had to inject my mother with a specific chemical to mummify the other fetus so it would not degrade within the womb. So that was already
terrible
quite
and
traumatic
tragic
for my family at the time. I had no awareness of this, growing up, because my parents would not even talk to me about it. And every time I asked my mom about these details, she kept changing a story, because she was going around the bush. And a lot of issues arose from that, because, I said to you that at 6 months old, my skin came back and everything was fine, but I also developed asthma. And I had bronchitis and asthma at the same time. So those attacks were killing me. And I could take the air in, but I could not take it out. I could not breathe out. So I was basically choking on air, which was very, very strange. And so they sent me to a center for 2 months. It was basically a center for children with huge cases of asthma, and I was taken away from my family, and I basically was staying in that center for quite some time, 2 or 3 months, I think it was, and they basically healed me. I came back, but I didn't recognize my family, and I called my dad friend, in the car. I was in the back, and he just mentioned that to me back in May when I went to France, and I asked him again, and he said, it shocked me when I was hearing this voice in the back of the car saying, copain, copain, with the Béarnese accent, from the south of France, and I was saying, friend, and I was talking to my dad. And he turned back and he basically wept. He cried because he was so shocked by it, realizing that his own son would call him friend because I didn't recognize him. So I guess it was kind of traumatic for them. And I just came back to normal afterwards, I guess. I had to, relearn everything and everything else in the family. But, I had to go through this experience when I was growing up. But then after that, everything was normal. I'd never had any other issues since. I never got sick. I never got, never got unhealthy or nothing at all whatsoever. In fact, I'd never had any surgeries.
It's almost a miracle what you had to accomplish in order just to survive.
Well, I mean, I didn't have a choice. That's the way it was. And I'm not the only one. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people had to go through these kind of things. My mother and my dad had a car crash together when my mom was 16 at the time, and I was not even a thought at the time, and my dad was 19, and they had a frontal car crash, and they both died multiple times during the surgeries, and they stayed 6 months in the hospital. My dad was basically beneath the steering wheel, and my mom went through the windscreen. And one of the other occupants died, and it was very traumatic. And when my mother died, she went through the white tunnel, and she saw the beings, and they told her it was not her time. And that's when she decided to become Buddhist. And because no one in the family related to her experience, my dad joked around because we kept asking him, have you gone to the same tunnel? Because you died, the same amount of time as our mom. And he joked around saying, no, I didn't see any tunnels, but, I came back with a gift of poker. So, he was able to play poker very well. And that was kind of a gift, to him, because even people just ban him from tables because he's so good at it. He's got so much luck. But, in terms of the spiritual world, he has no interest in that whatsoever. And nor does he understand it, and he wants to understand it. So my mom, on the other hand, has, turned a new leaf, trying to be closer to, not so much to God, but, the spiritual world and these sort of things. And every time she was mentioning this, I was rolling my eyes because I could not, again, understand what she was going through, or, it was not something I was comfortable with being raised by my dad. You can understand that this was a very, difficult time for me because I was always going back and forth between my mom and my dad. And, my dad was very pragmatic, business-like. So I kind of, nowadays, and I probably owe my success to having been raised between both worlds of, business and spiritualism, to have been comfortable enough with the idea and not basically allowing me to live in fear that most people, in my case, would be. I still feel pretty grounded despite all of the experiences I've gone through. And I surrounded myself with people who are also very grounded. So it might be, to some extent, I would say a disfavor to what I'm going through as well, or what I could do. But it's also necessary for me to, raise my family and to have, I've got 2 young kids, and they're both very gifted. But and I'm encouraging that, in them. My daughter is very psychic, and she had ET experiences as well without even knowing what I went through and what I've experienced. And she just came up with dreams and visions that are very much the same as mine.
We got about 7 minutes before we have to go to our first break. When it comes to your daughter being an ET contact, and your daughter is of young age, we don't need to get into the specifics of that. But as a parent, Sebastian, what's it like for you when your daughter comes up to you and says, "Daddy, I'm having strange dreams or visitations," and she's starting to describe to you what she is seeing. Do you fear? Do you have some reservations because you know you can't protect her? What goes through your mind as a parent?
Well, not so much as a parent, but as someone who has been involved in agendas like from the government, and I know a lot of people in those departments. I understand it, and I'm not frightened by it. I know that this is unfair to her in a way if she was not volunteering from it, but she is, and it's hard for anyone to accept that, from a 7-year-old child saying, how can you say that, for your child, she's got no control over it. I could have said the same thing about myself. But at the end of the day, as a soul being, what I understand about the soul, and I've seen her soul before it even entered her body when my wife was pregnant. And that's an experience I had that was the most amazing experience. And I was shown how this worked for her case. Doesn't mean this is the case for everybody else. But in her case, she didn't have a soul until she was, my wife was 3 months pregnant, and then the soul came in. In fact, there was a procession of souls queuing up and bending towards the womb to find out if they would be the right fit for this child. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was, basically standing on the bed. I was on my elbow on the bed looking at them, and I was not feeling scared. I just knew that this was the way it was going. And it was not, again, something that I could control, nor could my child. This was, something that had to happen. And I do believe that there are many forces at play, even within the government, that nobody knows about, that are based on what we volunteer to do right from the get-go. And so I came to accept that.
But on a human level, as a parent, even though you may have seen this coming, there still has to be that level of fear that we have for our children.
No, the only way I can protect her is when she's wide awake, when she's with me, and I can explain to her things that makes us stronger. And she's a very strong soul, probably stronger than I am. But she's so determined at 7 years old, you wouldn't believe, like she has all the characteristics of her personality already, which is, scientifically proven at 7 years old, you have pretty much your personality all, done for you. And she exactly came back with this dream that she had. And she knew it was not just a dream. And she saw herself in the arms of this short gray alien with people from the government in the room. And she described them to me as well, physically, and what they were wearing and what they were doing. And she was not scared by any of it. The only thing that she got scared of, and why she woke up in the middle of the night, is because she was in this kind of carousel, and she was ejected from the seat because she got afraid by the speed that the carousel was going like. It was like a chair ride. And she got ejected from that chair ride, and she landed in the arms of his short gray aliens. And when she looked at him and she described him to me, it was so pretty much like what Whitley Strieber would describe about the short grays, but in more details. Like she saw them without the eye goggles that they wear, the black ones. She saw their real eyes. And they were white, they were like pure white inside with a black dot in the middle of the eyes. That's all she saw. And I said to her, I said, you didn't get scared by that being? And she said to me, no. He was actually stunned to have me in his arms, and then he just dropped me on the floor, not knowing what to do with me. And that's what she said. And the only thing that scared her was being ejected from the chair by the sheer force of the lift. And what I've learned, again, because I'm in touch with all these people in government, and I got confirmations of what happened there. And they told me that this is a good sign because my family is being protected. Not only they're being tested, but they're also being protected. You may not understand why and what's the whole agenda behind it, but this is what goes on. And I know the people, involved in that. So This is the first time I'm even discussing this, on the radio or anywhere on any interviews. But this is something that I can share because, I won't mention names or anything else, but I know these people. And when this experience happened, Charlotte, my daughter, was very clear about that she was okay with it. There was no problems with the experience. In fact, she kind of jokes around it, and she confides in me in more details and more stuff that happens to her in her life because she understands that not only I support her, but I also experienced it, and she knows that she can trust me with it.
How does your wife feel about that, knowing that her daughter is continually being taken?
She's not really interested in knowing this. In fact, my own daughter tells me, "Don't tell mommy." She's the one who tells me this, and I respect her wish. But she has visions of people, like before we even meet them for the first time, and she describes them to me in detail. She did like a third eye training when she could do an exercise of let's say one session takes a week. She did 6 sessions in 1 hour. And she was able to see objects and people in the room, and she was able to read completely blindfolded within 15 minutes. And she was able to describe objects behind a wall that we hid, for future sessions. And it was just unreal. And she was able to do this very, very easily. And I was able to do the same thing with another child,
right,
her age, who basically did the same thing, and I filmed the whole thing. So it's interesting to when you share this with even their parents, and they see what's going on even live when they're in the room. They just can't trust that. They must see things through the blindfold, and they're just peering through that. And when they wear the blindfold on, they can see that there's no light coming through. And even if there was light coming through, they would still not be able to read the way
right,
they read or what they could see, even
right,
through a wall, or even what's behind the pages of a book.
Right. Sebastian, I got to cut you off right there because we got to go to our first break of the night. Sebastian Martin, owner and creator of NSUHO, is on Spaced Out Radio tonight. In hour number 2, we're going to get more into disclosure and consciousness. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. This weekend, Tessa Nicole Thomas is in for Spaced Out Weekend, while I am off finding my Zen and my Chi. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget, you can also find our archives on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hepatico cholangio colecti stenterostomies. What the hell is that, Bill? Honestly, I'm not even trying that a second time. Don't care. Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, you can also now go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now for the first annual Caribou Paracon. Our featured speaker is Grant Cameron, followed by David Weatherly, Ross Allison, Lorian Fenton. I will be speaking as well. This is presented by Spaced Out Radio, September 28th through 30th at the beautiful Spruce Hill Resort and Spa in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. I want to see as many Spaced Out Radio listeners there as possible to shake your hands. Tonight, we bring in Sebastian Martin. He is from NSUHO.com. NSUHO, a sponsor of Spaced Out Radio, is also a great YouTube channel. So make sure when you check out his YouTube channel, NSUHO, that's NSUHO, real simple to spell, you click that subscribe button as well. Sebastian, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave.
Really appreciate it. Now, in your own personal contact that you had as we lead into disclosure and consciousness here, what species has or have you been in contact with, and why do you think they chose you?
Well, the original ETs that abducted me was by mistake, I guess. They I don't think they really knew who I was until they tested me on a spacecraft, which were the tall gray aliens. I'd never seen them since. I remember them very well, but I have no real affinity with them, and I don't think they really care as to who they abduct, but they still are aware of various avatars of aliens living on Earth that they cannot touch, and I was one of them. And the reason being is because those gray aliens were still part of an alliance as much as the other ETs. So there's a group of extraterrestrials that are responsible for the human genetics of the planet, and they have attempted this for millennia, and they are currently on the fifth attempt, which is the fifth and the last on Earth. What I've been mentioned or told by the beings that came to see me, i.e., assuming they were the Pleiadians, but in fact they are the Anunnaki. And why I'm saying this, and I would like to skip some of the other experiences I had between 2011 and 2008 and 16, because I had already discussed these kind of topics on radio shows and like with Kerry Cassidy, for example, which kind of led to a myriad of contacts, very interesting contacts, and people that I'm still in touch with today, which are also responsible for my involvement in some secret agendas, and not in a nefarious negative way, but more to do with disclosure. And even if it was not introduced that way to me at first, it was all geared up towards that goal. And why I'm saying this is because the first people that reached out to me on Facebook, out of all places, in social media, they then just didn't bother saying hello. They just hooked up on Facebook, and I just accepted them as friends that I've never met. And then during one of the nights I had a very clear vision of a woman. And I was basically in bed. I was about to put my head down on the pillow, so I was not quite asleep yet. and I had this vision of this woman. I was seeing an event through her own eyes, and I was in Baghdad in Iraq, and I just realized that she was about to be, she was asked to stay down on the back of a car, going through the streets of Baghdad. It was a very busy street, and through her eyes, I was able to see some people in the streets, and one of them I recognized very well, at least my attention from her perspective meant like I recognized him. And so I focused my attention on him, and then from this guy, I just realized there were a few other civilians in the crowd that were also doing the same thing, which was looking for someone. And I believe that this one was the person we were searching for. And this other person in the car asked her to stay down. And right away, I recognized a name from my Facebook list that I contacted after that, not knowing who she was. And I said, this probably means nothing to you, but I just knew, like from the vision I had, that I knew her name, I knew who it was, and I knew the location. I didn't have a date, but I just knew that this was something she should be aware of. And so when I mentioned that to her, she kind of got spooked by it at first. She said to me, okay, thanks for sharing. And then she sent me an image, the image of the guy I saw on the street. And I said, yes, that's the guy. And slowly but surely, she started to open up about, who this guy was, and he was working for the government in Iraq, post-Baghdad. This was post-Saddam Hussein. I'm talking about in recent years, and like 2 years ago. And she basically started to share more and more information with me, which led to more people contact me about what I was able to do. And step by step, I got involved with people from, the CIA and MI6 and the French services to the Canadian services, and so on and so on and so on. And all of these people were, now you probably would be asking, how do you know they were from these agencies?
Right.
Well, one, they were starting telling me that they were working for these agencies, which is like a no-brainer for me to know who they are. Also that other people that I knew had real good credentials, who basically had experiences, like, for example, that the embassy in Baghdad, in Iraq, during the time of, post-Saddam Hussein. And, they were not jokers. And those people had real credentials. You could see them on LinkedIn. And those people had contacts within the governments. And when you start talking to them, they start telling you about mission codes or names and or people's names, and you get corroboration from one person to another, even from people who died in the field, simply because I got involved in specific missions involving some agents in the field that died, or they were asking me to locate them. So they were not just like random missions. It was all related to the Middle East. And why I had such an ease with this was all related to the Anunnaki. But I didn't know why. But it led to specific events that led me to be in Iraq once again. Like I've been there multiple times through remote viewing. And all of these people were also testing me to find out what I could do. So I'm giving you an example. There was a case of, some people that died, and they were giving me names, and I was trying to be exercising my ability to find out what happened to them. And I was seeing documents, I was seeing events through those people's eyes again before they died. And that was linked to very powerful people in certain governments. I'm talking about, Jordan, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, all these Middle Eastern countries. I had certain missions involving that. And nowadays, probably about 70 missions overall in the last year and a half. So I've been pretty busy doing these things. And what I came to realize is that while I was doing specific missions, those people who were in NSUHO in Iraq, where supposedly the Stargate that was from the Anunnaki was in Iraq, And Saddam Hussein was about to disclose their secret space program at the time. And in 2001, there was an invasion in Iraq that was led by the U.S. Army, and saying that they had weapons of mass destruction, when in fact all they were after were about the ancient technologies that were there. And all of these got confirmed by the people in government that I'm in touch with. So, this would never become public on CNN or other major channels, but this is the inside information that I got involved in. And this is not news information from the standpoint, like I think Dr. Sala mentioned it, but it doesn't really provide the sources or why. And I was there doing a remote viewing session. It was not from someone who told me and asked me to believe them in what they were sharing with me. I was there. I was on site. I described what those people saw with their own eyes, and it's just from one event to another that I just came to realization that this technology is something that my star family or the Anunnaki were involved in. And that's the reason why all these places and these people came so clearly to me, because they serve the purpose in my own agenda or my own mission. Let's say, if you call it a mission, it's not so much of a mission, but at least to allow me to understand who I am as a human being beyond the business world. That if I have a purpose, to some extent, it's not just to help governments in doing their missions. It's to understand why I'm here and how I can facilitate the agenda of the ETs to communicate with the human race. This was mentioned to me back in 2011 by Zoe. The first thing that they said to me and my star father on the spaceship, because that's the bearded guy I ended up to be, he told me that I was supposed to be coming back to Earth and awaken the star seeds of this planet. And at the time, I thought, whatever, I don't really care about this. I don't even know what that means. So I kind of abandoned it until it came back to me in full force. And they spoke to me, and I was led to certain paths in my life that I would have never, thought about unless I was guided to do them and almost like forced to do them. So, ignoring them was not really helping me or helping others, but it certainly helps me now, in many ways, like to not only protect myself through psychic attacks, being more vocal and verbal about what's going on, about my own experiences and the people I got involved in. And I had, attacks, like talking about psychic attacks from government agencies and alien races as well. There are, all of these people, it's funny because when I was hearing those topics from Laura Eisenhower and other people like Alfred Weber and, having those delusions, basically topics to me at the time, I thought, I don't believe this, it's just impossible. But until you experience it, then it's real. And you can't make it up. It's not, your brain messing up with you. It's not your body messing up with you. I mean, I had so many weird attacks that thinking it was just anxiety attacks or like a heart attack. And, I'm healthy as a ox and I don't have any health issues. And yet, I now recognize what how those psychic attacks are being perpetrated and where they, who generates them and how they are being conducted and what are the side effects of them. And since I got involved in those missions, I also got involved with people doing the same work as I do. So I got connected to the same people in the cell that are doing the same work as I do. And all of these people, when I have a psychic attack, for example, on a specific mission, they also get attacked at the same time. And they don't even know why. They don't even know where it comes from. So if one of us gets attacked, then we know how to work around that and how to fix it. So when I was having my experiences with the Anunnaki, the first thing that I came to learn, or at least download, let's put it that way, was the Kundalini experience, which was completely foreign to me. Even the term was foreign to me until Kerry Cassidy mentioned to me after my interview with her for 2 hours. And that kind of made sense. So, it's not like I was trying to research it or the use of it, but I just knew how to use it in many ways. Like I can actually trigger it on demand, and I can just come out of my body. I can use it to protect myself and also to fix my DNA, which has been used multiple times when I was attacked, psychically. And so when you mentioned about coming back to your original question, sorry, I'm kind of going around this massive loop here, but the Anunnaki were the original beings that spoke to me, making sure that I understood that I was part of a genetic manipulation, like the whole humanity was part of it, that they were in charge of that themselves, that they cared about us, but not so much to the extent that, if we died along the way, that's one of those casualties that they can cope with, because they don't really perceive humanity as essential. In a way, they see us as being important to them. They can learn a great deal from our, creation. But at the same time, they won't tell us exactly who we are. They won't remove that veil of secrecy and amnesia just for the sake of it, simply because they were told not to. And we serve them in a much better fashion if we don't know who we truly are, what we can truly do. And I'm talking about being a soul being. So as a soul being, if you know your true self or your higher self, and you know where you originate from, you know that your soul is way more powerful than they are. And therefore, if they tell you that you are very special or you have a mission to do for them, don't trust it, because that's not real. That's not true. It's part of the agenda. It's part of what your original souls agreed to do and to help them, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it because of them. They're only participating in a much larger mission in this universe or multiverse, and that's to do with the expansion of consciousness in the multiverse. And that's important in the whole matter of fact. It's the duality between oblivion and consciousness, or being self-aware. And that is very important in the multiverse. That's what the final message from the archangels that came to visit me as well, like face-to-face, shared with me, to tell me don't get fooled by them because they have their own agenda. And that really changed a lot of things for me.
Sebastian?
In fact, at some point I even thought, yes.
Yeah, finish up.
At some point I thought, I should ignore them altogether and not help them and not be involved in any of this and just enjoy my life and carry on the way it was. But, then I came to realize that, we need to learn from this as well. And I think humanity deserves to know who they are as a whole. And, to not only just fight, adversity and everything else, but also removing that veil of falsehood that's behind us, all the time. Like, we live within an illusion. And this illusion is what we call the collective consciousness.
Right. I want to get into, some of the stories that are out there, okay? Because when listening to you and, and in getting to know you very well, I can tell that you're having true experiences and you are just relaying the experiences that you have had to people. But there are so many shysters in this field, Sebastian, okay?
Right.
Whether it's, the fake news sites that they have set up, or these fake news type radio programs that they have set up, or elaborate claims of blue chickens running around and so on and so forth that have been debunked over and over again. How do you find your own true message that you are receiving comparatively to some of the crap that is out there that is ultimately hindering this entire field?
You're right. Well, simply because, I would turn down invitations from channels like even Gaia TV. And I'm mentioning that because they offered me at one point a place on their show. And I was actually debating it at some point, thinking maybe, this might help me promote the NSUHO channel, but also the work I wish to do based on, I would say confirmations of people that shared with me that I would be creating a center to do with the communication from ETs with the human race. And if you still ask me today what this involves and everything else, I still don't know. I'm still trying to put the pieces together. So I don't come as a person who has all the answers, but I do believe in synchronicities, and I also don't have to work at this because I already made my money. I'm not chasing the fame or fortune. I could basically live off the money I've made off my multinational that I sold 4 years ago, and that I don't really need to run after that, which is what most people do. Like if you look at Corey Good or David Wilcock, even David Wilcock, when he resigned from Gaia, did say that he stayed with them because he needed the money. And most of these people, don't live off millions, and therefore they sometimes have to, create stories to keep the ball rolling, because otherwise it becomes too stale. And as you know from most media entertainment channels, it's all about, the audience and making sure that you get the subscribers, but also, it doesn't have to be the truth, because to them, they don't know what the truth is. They are there as advocates for sharing information, but they don't really vouch for anyone who say, well, if it sells, if it generates, revenue for our channel, that's great because it makes money. But they're not there to tell you that these people are all telling their truth. Now, what I disagree with is that those people are not thoroughly vetting them out before putting them on their show. And that's what I disagree with. And I think once they exploit the idea of a topic that has been mentioned before on other websites or forums by other people, and one person decides to combine all these experiences into one and come up with like a Blue Avian story, for example, that to me rings false. And I can't prove it, but I have enough people right now out there telling me that this is not real, that in many stories you have like 10% of truth and 90% of fiction. And again, it's very hard to prove anything because, like in the case of Corey Good, he hasn't been able to provide any documentations related to his story. Now, what I know of from my experiences in the field is that the people I'm working with and the missions, and again, related to disclosure and related to the invasion of Iraq and the Stargate of Iraq, you also have to realize, and this is what Richard Dolan mentioned as a researcher and historian, mentioned that in 2001, the dark budget, even from the SSP, was only $2.1 trillion worth. And today we are speculating over a few trillions, but it's in the vicinity of about $20 trillion. It ranked up pretty fast in such a short period of time. And I know from the people in the field who are also involved in the true SSP, who I'm working with, are basically telling me that in 2001, let alone the time of Corey Good when he talks about his 20 years of missions and then going back when he was 16 years old, they didn't have the technology in those days to make this happen. And that's pretty much the bottom line of, the SSP experiences you can get. Now, Corey Good could go after me and attack me on those kind of things, but he cannot either prove or disprove what I'm just talking about right now to you. Know that, I cannot prove or disprove to you right now because the people that are sharing this information with me, would not, become public about it. They do say, however, that the major disclosure is going to be happening in 2020. And I'm talking about people working in Area 52, the Pentagon, people involved in Iraq, some mercenaries, some MI6 people, some French nationals who also work for the DGSE. All of these people are saying the same thing to me. And they're not jokers. They would not say that for the sake of,
right.
you know.
Let me stop you right there for a second, because when you talk about people like you have contacts at Area 52, which is considered Dugway in Utah, you have people involved in the SSP and other private military type alphabet agencies. Why talk to you? What makes,
well, because I help them.
And I'm not saying this to be insulting, but why you?
Well, that's a good point. The fact is that, you know, one person led to another, and so on and so on. And I was involved in missions that involved more than one person or agencies, as a matter of fact. And sometimes it was acting as a service, and I was not paid, and I'm not being paid by any of them because I don't want to feel dependent on any of them. So, you know, I was offered some videos and projects that were very, very dark. And I just turned them down because I didn't want to do this. I was not interested in doing remote viewing sessions for those kind of topics. You know, we talked about, you know, Pizzagate and, you know, dark rituals from these, you know, secret societies and all of that. And I know those things exist. I know that those secret agencies or the secret societies who are working towards rituals involving children and all of that, and the Draco race. All of this is real. And I can't go into details about that, but I know this exists, and I know it goes on. And it saddens me when, you know, I have those agencies approaching me with those details and videos that I've seen and ask my help. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to be doing that. And then that's it. That's where it stops. But why are they helping me? Why are they, you know, so confident in sharing this information with me? Is simply because we develop relationships over time, and I help them and I save people's lives the same way as I, you know, retrieve bodies from dark holes that were left there by some terrorists, you know, who left them in those holes because they didn't know where those agents were gone. You know, these kind of things you develop bonds, and you can't help it. You know, some of those things are related to other people that, you know, they know each other. They could be friends. They could be working from two different countries, but they become very good friends and very close friends. And these agencies, these people, it's a very niche market. Like, it's very tight. They all know each other. They all either work with each other when they have to, but even if they don't want to do that all the time, they still all know each other. And so when I got involved in that, you know, I'm a French national to begin with, living in Canada. I'm kind of in no man's land here. Like, I don't really get involved into politics, and nor do I want to. But based on the visions I had, they recognized something in me, I guess, that could help. And that's really based on the vision I had back in 2009 from Rafik Hariri, who was the ex-prime minister of Lebanon, who was assassinated in Beirut in a car bombing, and a few people died there. And I saw this event through the eyes of an agent on the rooftop of a building, and that's how it all unfolded for me. When other people in the agencies saw something that was still pretty much live, because it's not finished. Like, you know, all of this involved Syria, it involved Baghdad, it involved, you know, so many other countries that are still pretty much involved in various missions and political agendas that, you know, they obviously saw something that was useful. And I was okay helping them with that when I could. You know, I was able to derail some plots, and I was able to find some agents that were rogue or partners or mercenaries that were basically stealing money or, you know, got killed at the end because they were, you know, helping the wrong people, like, you know, the Russian mob, you know, these kind of things. So when you see something that, even if I don't have a date, but when I sense something or when I see something and I share it, they take the information and they, you know, many times over, you know, they said to me, we don't know what to do with this because we can't understand it. and it's not relevant to them at that point. But then down the line, they realize that it becomes very relevant, because if they wiretap a phone or if they keep an eye on a person related to the remote viewing session I had, they will say, well, it got confirmed, right? So even if I don't really know the specifics of what got involved and everything else, and I don't want to, I really want to stay in the dark as much as possible when it involves those kind of things. I'm still, helping, and at the same time, when I have a question related to what I'm experiencing, they help because they feel like they can and they want. And some of these people, and it's very interesting because I've met both sides of the equation within the agencies. Those who basically are completely adamant to disclose anything to do with the ETV presence on Earth, they will say, no, this would never happen, we'd never talk about it. And they're very clear about that, and that's where it stops. And there are those within the same agencies who are involved in different programs, for example, who then say, well, because of our affiliations with the SSP, and many of these agents do work for the SSP, will then tell me, we would like to share some information with you. And these are the real whistleblowers. These are the ones who would not go in front of a TV, camera to share what they have to share. But that comes through me because I'm sharing it with you tonight. I'm sharing certain things that are not being known to other people. And it comes to me as a certain certainty because the know-how and the discernment I managed to get over time, also with my own encounters, I can tell you that when I see someone, I can tell if that person is lying simply by just looking at them, but also it gets confirmed by, people in the agencies as well who tell me things that are not, talked about on radio shows and on TV. So, this to me, if people wish to believe in my story, in what I'm involved in, I basically can't, help it, but say it's up to you. Use your own discernment. What do you have to gain in sharing this information? Sometimes at the risk of my own, livelihood. Because if I'm currently living in peace, in British Columbia, if it gets in the wrong ears, I could be threatened. I got threatened. I got attacked. I didn't get the help from anybody else but the ETs when my life was in danger. And I'm not expecting the public to even realize that or care about it because it doesn't concern them. I'm beyond that. But that's okay. That's what I chose to do. That's my own path. It doesn't mean that this is the path of someone else or you're, on your own path as well. You talk about different topics. For me, it becomes clearer and clearer that I need to focus on a specific goal in order to disclose these events, not so much for the sake of entertainment and to be living in sensationalism, but more about real disclosure to help humanity because it seems to be the real thing to do. And it's funny because I'm doing this every day, and yet my wife doesn't want to know anything about this because to her, she's comfortable in the life she has. She said, why do we have to care? We have this money, we have this lifestyle. Why do we have to do anything else but relying on what we've achieved in our lifetime and we could just retire and just be well? And that's it. And that's true. And it's true. And for her, she's content with that. That's her life. For me, I got involved in that in 2011 while I was blossoming in my business world. It shocked me and it approached me at the worst time possible when I was growing my business. And it's something that I could not escape. I had no choice. This is where, when I say I had no choice, until I realized that I had the choice, obviously, because I volunteered for this right from the get-go as a soul being. So now that I know all of this, it's my duty to share what I know and in the best way and the simplest way as possible without, trying to create fantasies around any of this. It's a simple, clear agenda that I have, and it's not about making money. The people who are also willing to help me today, and I've got very powerful people who are also willing to help me for multiple reasons, not to make money, but to make this work possible. It's not about creating a channel like to be competing with Gaia TV or trying to be a radio host or trying to create a YouTube channel that could be making millions of subscribers. I couldn't care less about that. To me, it's not so much about this. That what's important is for the people to hear the right message and for the people to be involved, not so much for me, but for themselves. And once they know and they can participate in this mission for themselves to realize who they are and what they can do to create a better contact, it's not so much for themselves. The majority of the people who are listening to your show today are already aware. They're already conscious. They are curious about it. Doesn't mean that they know everything. I don't know everything, but at least, they're already awake. The majority of the population is not awake, and it's our duty to help them, trying to not only raise their level of consciousness, but also help the planet with this agenda, because it cannot go on and we cannot repeat history the way we've done it before. And this was very clear to me by the Anunnaki when they approached me. They said, this is the fifth and the last attempt of manipulations for humankind. You have all the tools you need to elevate your consciousness, to basically be aware and create a better world for yourself. And that's to change the collective consciousness as we have it today, which is an illusion. That's what we made for ourselves. Like I said before, the way you see the grass as green and the sky as blue is part of our collective consciousness. There are some, basically First Nations revelations or prophecies that they have, and they all have in common, which is the rainbow prophecy. And one thing that really hit home run with me was when they said that at one point there would be all the human races joining up in a circle, and the trees will grow overnight, or we regrow overnight, and that cannot happen in our current collective consciousness, because it's not true. A tree cannot become adult in 1 second. But if we make it possible, if perhaps we change the way we see the world and the way we understand things about space and time, things could change drastically. And this cannot happen in our current state of mind. We need to have a much better understanding as to who we are and not living in fear, because living in fear only stops the true message of consciousness in order to elevate your soul to a much higher realm. And there are multiple dimensions out there that exist, and we only know of a few. So if we basically are opening ourselves up to the true agenda from the ETs, now if they want to eradicate us from this planet, in order to invade it and take it over, they would have done it already. It's simple for them. It should have been very simple. But they have a duty themselves to do with us, because they work so hard at manipulating us the way we are today. It doesn't mean that, they haven't wiped out some of the species on the planet before. It happened before. We talk about Lemurian, the Atlanteans, and the first, like the giants, and the first, humans, like with Noah and so on, and all of that. It's all related to the, attempts of creating something different. And we have this, DNA right now that, we could unlock it just with Kundalini. We can achieve much better states of mind, like, the third eye opening that we can do today with, even children. We have all the tools within ourselves. It's just a matter of unlocking them, and it doesn't take much. But at the same time, it takes dedication, and it takes truth, and also not living in fear. And to me, that is the main goal of the center I wish to create. So we can provide tools to use, frequencies, because this planet is all about frequencies. We are all about frequencies. If we don't change the way we perceive the world today, we will never progress. We never make the final steps of evolution. And this evolution will happen on Earth before we can go somewhere else. And this is what the Anunnaki shared with me.
Okay, I got a question from Jade here for you, Sebastian, and she is asking, how can people then change their world? What can they do before it's too late? And how do you help others understand and become aware?
Well, it's never too late. That's the thing. We believe that we live in this time frame, that we're on this timeline that is so important that the world will cease to exist, with nuclear war. I can tell you that from what I know from people working even with the secret space program is that the ETs already have access to our technology, like, the H bombs and all of that, and they can easily neutralize all the attempts to use those weapons to prevent the annihilation of that planet. And it's been mentioned before, it's been shown before where they intervened, and they will make sure that this will never happen. And I know that this situation has been mentioned as well, like in South Africa, by this group of students, where John Mack went to South Africa and interviewed them, and all of these students, saw those short gray aliens sharing this message of fear of potential annihilation of this planet through nuclear war. And, this is what they shared with those children, saying, you have to change your ways because, this could be the potential outcome of human evolution. Well, I kind of disagree with that. This was a potential timeline that was presented to the children in the 80s. If this was their ways of sharing a future timeline for us to awaken us and to shake us up a bit, it worked quite well. But at the same time, this scenario would never occur. And so I think we do have time to change our ways. It might, I might even be dead by the time people awake, But at the same time, I know that my duty today is to help them change their ways in the coming years while I'm still alive and I can still do some work. And I've been shown that in the next 2 to 4 years, I would be involved in that agenda to, help people awake in that manner. And, that's just the beginning. It doesn't mean that it could be the end of it. It doesn't mean that I might be successful with it. I don't really know the outcome because I don't know how this will be unfolding. But at least I would try. So all we can do is try the best we can. And, if it's a matter of connecting with one another, and as long as the information and the message is true, that there is no ego associated with that, that's very important, that we can help one another because it makes sense, and that's the way we are supposed to be doing things. This is what I will be focusing on. I don't care if people judge me for trying this and thinking that I would try to make my next million out of this. It's not my goal. My goal is to do something that makes sense, that might be humble to begin with, that would be starting with specific tools of contact, or at least to help prevent people to live in fear when real contact happens on Earth. But you need ambassadors on this planet, and I'm not the only one, to be honest. I'm just one out of many that may want to do this because we had contact, because we've been awoken to do this work, and because I can. Financially, I'm able to do this. I can help people achieve their goals if they wish to do it. I know many other people in these consciousness movements who are also thriving at working on this behind the scene through various associations and helping engineers coming up with new technologies and these sort of things. Well, they are all working towards the same goal, and they all recognize the truth when they see it. And that's the discernment I talked to you about before. When someone sees this and there's no question that this will be happening for something that is genuine and kind, there's no point in even arguing it. There's no point in trying to question the logic behind this agenda, or trying to ask, are you going to be making money out of this? And even if an association or a corporation makes money out of this, maybe it is necessary to keep the ball rolling. Otherwise, people will be broke and people will give up, and because some of those workers have to be paid. And that's the way it goes. If I'm working with volunteers, then so be it. Then that will be cheaper. But I'm still, placing some real dough and real cash behind that to make it happen without the need of making a quick buck on that. It's not the agenda. The agenda is to make something that is viable that other people can use. If it's to do with the library, if it's to do with the techniques and tools like the Spookles experiment that happened back in the UK that got banned by the government and people got threatened and killed in the process that many people know about. But I met some of these people, and they had to stop what they were doing, literally.
Question for you. Who is controlling the agenda then? Is it the politicians here on Earth? Is it a shadow government, or is it the ETs themselves?
It's sort of. So some of the ETs are helping the SSP because they have a much better control. It's in a change of technology and people in terms of experiments. And so they, in terms of agenda, like I said to you before, the ETs use the amnesia process, so we don't remember who we are, so they can use us for their own sake. If it's to do with implants, if it's to do with downloads, it's whenever it fits their agenda. So in that way, we are not really in full control. Once you remember who you are and how you can help, that changes the whole perspective of things. So it's your free will that changes everything. If you realize that you've been helping them because you want them to do well for themselves and help the humanity, then you do your thing. For those who believe that they've been abducted against their will, and they agree with that, and it's repeated constantly, well, first of all, they have to realize that maybe those people agreed to help them through their soul to begin with. They simply don't remember because the ET used that against them, so they don't remember who they are as a soul being. It doesn't mean that they didn't agree with it in the first place. But at the same time, I heard that before, of people saying, I don't agree of being abducted. But at the same time, they want to believe, they want this to happen, they want more clarification about what the experience is all about. They want to actually be part of this, but simply because they don't remember, they just don't like the idea of being abducted and used without the knowledge. And that's the biggest difference between full realization and being abducted without remembering who you are.
We only got about 5 minutes here before we got to go to our final break of the night. Sebastian, when it comes to the agenda, and as we just talked, you said it's a collaboration of all three. I think a lot of people are confused because it's easy to pick out the human side of disclosure. Why or why not disclosure is a good or bad thing to actually come forward. In your conversations with your sources within very high-profile positions, what is the ET desire when it comes to disclosure?
Well, they want full disclosure, but they're also aware that we are not fully awake. And, because, one race of ET is not responsible for the amnesia of the world. They might only be responsible for a certain portion of humankind or avatars that they have on Earth that they can control, they can work with, but they don't work alone. And therefore, the ones that are working with the government also are aware, know that if whatever technology that they provide to the SSP that they use for specific agendas also would be misused in the hands of humanity today. Like to the common mortal, our ego will prevail, and our Draco reptilian race or mentality will take over the whole process and turn these technologies into bad things, either to make money, for destruction. So they will be misused, and for that same reason, the ETs do not want to provide full disclosure today, but they really wish to disclose this information in the coming years because they believe that many things will change. Now, what I heard, and I don't want to start creating polemics and fear over this, but based on my own experience and based on what I've seen, I know that the potential scenario that could exist for full disclosure is a simple one. All you need is a major disaster, like natural disaster, or what could seem like a natural disaster to humanity. So then the government can say, we've got help. We've got the ETs to help us, and we have those technologies, and we have this and that and that. And the humanity will then embrace that collaboration rather than seeing it as a threat. And they will have to work with them. But at that point, there might be a few casualties along the way through those natural disasters. So the population will be better controlled. So many people may say, well, this is like the New World Order. We're talking about the one-term currency and everything else. That's the Draco cabal type of agenda that I do not foresee as that will happen. What I'm saying is that we'll be given enough time to awaken the population through those collaborations with ETs and various races that are working with each other as an alliance to awaken humanity. So the subject and topic of the Kundalini and our relationships with the ETs and everything else, and whatever I went through myself over the last years, will be revealed to many, and that won't become as a surprise to many of us, because step by step people will embrace this idea. They will also be more aware of the potential dangers out there. And I do believe that the governments today know about the potential dangers that are out there in space. And it's not just from having nuclear weapons in space that provokes or leads Donald Trump to create the space program or Space Force to go as the sixth branch of the army. Is because he's aware of the potential threats coming from the Draco and from other ET races that are not so benevolent. He has to be embracing that topic the same way as we have to embrace who we are soon enough, because they can't push it away for further. This is the threshold. There's a timeline as to what's going to happen with humanity, and either way, the information will come out. Either way.
All right, my friend.
Putting it or disclosing it right away.
All right, I'm going to get you to hold on as we're going to step out for our final break of the night. Sebastien Martin, owner and creator of NSUHO on YouTube and NSUHO.com. Highly suggest you check them out. We're going to bring him back for another 30 minutes before we get to Faux News Fridays with the Encounters. Everett Themer will be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews. Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. This weekend, Tessa Nicole Thomas is back in SOR headquarters with Spaced Out Weekend. I will be off finding my Zen and my Chi and hopefully some clean air, because the air is terrible around here right now due to all the forest fires surrounding us. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget, you can also check out our archives for free. Go to youtube.com/spacedoutradio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and my is it ugly. Absolutely ugly. Hepaticocholangic. I don't even know. I'm just stopping right there. It's like 34 letters long. Hepaticocholangicocystensterosmize or something like that. I don't even know. I'm butchering it. Don't care. It's an ugly one, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Do not forget, you can go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the Fall Conference. Get your tickets right now for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio, September 28th through 30th. We got some great speakers coming up. Grant Cameron is our featured speaker, Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Eric Cooper, Ross Allison, Mike Morin, Michael W. Hall, Paisley Town, and so much more. I'll even be speaking on Sunday, so come on up to 108 Mile Ranch for the first annual Caribou Paracon. For the final time tonight, we introduce Sebastien Martin. He is the owner and creator of NSUHO, a YouTube channel where he interviews some of the greatest people in this field. There might even be an interview with me, so probably not so great at times. No offense, Sebastian. But nonetheless, you can go to his website, nsuho.com. That's NSUHO.com. Sebastian, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave.
I apologize if you hear me coughing in the background, and I know for most of you, you won't because I have my mute button on. It is so dry and arid up here right now, man. Like, you can't really smell the smoke in my house, but it's just, and it's just dead air. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible up here right now.
Mm. Yeah, we have the same thing on Vancouver Island, and we saw the haze from Vancouver today, where I'm currently staying, and it's all over the place. I mean, it's been so dry lately that you have more and more forest fires, and so that's the way it goes.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. I just wish wait for forest fire season to end. When I first moved up here, there wasn't many at all. I guess we were due. Mother Nature said we were due, so just cleaning up the forest. But nonetheless, getting back to disclosure and the experiences that you have and the connections you have made, from what you have been able to figure out from the insider and the intel that you have received, both from your contacts in the off-world and contacts here within the shadow-type governments, when do you see disclosure happening?
Well, I have the firm conviction, and again, this is a timeline that may prove itself wrong in the next 2 years if, what I'm saying tonight is wrong. Something else may have happened. It still won't change the fact that I will work towards this myself, and other people will too. You mentioned Grant Cameron, I think, is one of the few people out there as well who basically, want to have disclosure by 2020. I think, we all wish to have some kind of disclosure based on all the plethora of evidence that it's already out there, and that the government is also releasing on the internet. You can see more and more, even the main media talks about like UFO sightings from airplane pilots and these sort of things, or from pilots from the army and all that. So you have a certain amount of disclosure already going on just to prepare the masses of the possibility that we are being visited. The majority of the people don't know that, we have ET races working with agencies around the globe. The French are working and have been working with a short grays for the last 50 years, but it doesn't mean that the majority of the Americans or North American people hear about this, because this happens in Europe. We are so, distant from what happens overseas that we only care about what's going on in our own country or on our own continent, which is fair enough. But even here, we don't really know what's going on truly in South America. And there's a huge amount of disclosure and events going on in South America. I'm involved with a lot of people in the field down there too, Spaniards and people who speak, Spanish all the time. I was fortunate enough growing up from France, to learn Spanish as a second language. And while I haven't been able to use it and practice it over the years, and I became more fluent in English, I still can appreciate the relationships I developed over time with the South American cultures, and even the visit of places like Bolivia and Peru and Mexico, and there's such a rich culture to do with the ancient presence of ETs, that's out there, that are completely mind-blowing. And for the majority of the people to ignore that alone on this planet, who simply don't want to face it, in terms of ancient civilizations, is just dumb. You just have to realize that it does exist, and I think it's all in front of us. What we don't have is the historical value, like in terms of written text, because it's all, forgotten. We don't remember what happened because it's either all destroyed, all underwater, or without the actual text that, would tell us about what went on. I mean, there are some ancient texts that do exist out there, like, the ones like from ancient Sumeria and clay tablets, even if, many people already criticize that as well as being false news. There is some real presence of mythological facts that I'm talking about mythological facts because they started off as mythology and then they branched out to become true. Like, those kind of places existed for whatever is even mentioned in the Bible. They even used some of those texts in the Bible apparently to retrieve the city of Troy, for example, as an example. So it's not, so much of disclosure is being just fiction. I think, it will happen. How is the real question? What would it take for the government to disclose what they know? It's just a matter of scenarios. How can we prepare ourselves for a change in society that would be so drastic that it will completely overturn the way people use technologies today, including petrol, oil. I believe yesterday or day before, I just came across a document that said that most of the cars will no longer be running on oil in the next 6 years. That's coming up fast, very fast. And I'm not just making up that news. This is something that the world is preparing already to change, in terms of technological usage. If it's to do with electric cars, so be it. Free energy, all of these things. I foresee those technologies to be available to us to a certain extent, so we can use it in our society, simply because the way the world would evolve or work will no longer be true the way it is today as the way it's going to be like in the next 4 or 5 years. So things will have to change. You talked about climate change with the forest fires. If we looked at the natural disasters that would be coming up, we're just living on a time bomb here. If you look at all the big earthquakes that could happen, they happened in the past. They've been timed. We're already 500 years overdue on Vancouver Island, or we live on the west coast of Canada and the U.S. All of these things, all the scientists nowadays would say, this is not, if, it's just when. And so I think, the government is also aware of that. They prepare themselves for major disasters, but also how to help the rest of humanity to change their ways so we can no longer or further destroy the planet the way we've been doing it for the last years. So this agenda you were asking earlier as to why they would be doing this, it's not so much that they want to, but they simply have to. Because if they don't, whatever they've been working on for the last decades or even years, is no longer going to be working efficiently because their efforts will be completely ditched into a drain. So they have to work with what they know. And what they know is what the ETs share with them in terms of disclosure. So if they have advanced technologies to use to help humanity, well, they will be using it for different reasons. Like they will start with off-planet missions, which is something that is currently going on. I'm not just talking about what NASA and Trump is trying to do by going to Mars. I'm talking about other types of off-planet missions. The warp drive technology that will be created to even get to Mars in the next 2 years will be squashed in space and time. And instead of a 3-month trip, it's going to be a 3-day trip to go to Mars. So today, they don't really know the impacts of travel in space to go to those far places such as Mars, because they are concerned that even the astronauts themselves will suffer from those short bursts of trips to go to Mars, and they might be too weak to even carry on or even land or do anything on site once they arrive there, if they use the conventional rockets that we have them today. When you look at...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. When you listen to the astronaut Petty, I can't remember his first name, he's American, and he talked about something on YouTube that was quite incredible. He said, we can no longer land on the moon because we no longer have the technology. That's what he said. And it makes you wonder, well, they had the technology back in the 1960s, but they no longer have it. Well, he actually went further, saying it got destroyed. So if it got destroyed, it just makes you wonder as to why they could not recreate it and why it would take so long to recreate it. I do believe that the reason why is because they've been made aware of the ET presence on the moon. The SSP is definitely aware of that. If Corey Good talks about presence of ETs on the moon and Mars, he's right about that. It doesn't mean that all the far-fetched stories that are around that are true, but those basic facts are real. And, it doesn't take much for, him to even mention it because it's been mentioned by other people too. But I've been told this as well directly, and I can tell you that from my sources, they know that this is real and that there are some ET races that don't want the human presence on the moon or even in Mars, because there are multiple races that live, on Mars. And for the human race to go to these places, not only the ET disclosure, has to be known, but it also has to be agreed upon by those ET races in the first place. And in order for this to be achieved and work, we need to have full disclosure. Otherwise, there will be no future man-made missions to the moon or even Mars. It simply won't work. And, it would just result in a massive explosion or the loss of lives because it would no longer proceed, and we would say, well, we still have to work on technology to make it happen. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think they're just working towards a very specific agenda designed with the dates that do match the full disclosure by 2020. So that's what I firmly believe.
That's just around the corner, my friend. I mean, that's less than a year and a half away.
And I agree. And, it surprised me as much as it surprised you because I'm not prepared for this myself. I don't even know how the world is going to look like in 2020, let alone how my life is going to be affected by it. As an investor and as a human being who made his money, who invested his money, it just makes me wonder, what will happen of even the wealth I built. On a personal level, this may be the end of whatever world I've created, and it will create a lot of uncertainty and a lot of instabilities in my own life. So I've got a hard time working around that. So it's not about just creating a center for the sake of making a quick buck that will save the world, or save myself. But somehow I trust that this is the right thing to do and this is the way it's supposed to be. So if I get that confirmation and support from people who tell me, this is the right way to do it, I'm doing it, because I can't just worry and, again, live in fear over full disclosure. Because I believe that a better outcome is out there for us. And, I've been working in my own energy and knowing what I could do with it. And I'm not afraid of dying. I came very close to that multiple times. And I'm not that afraid anymore, because I know what it involves. I know what it's like to die. I know what it's like to feel this, this burst of energy that is way beyond our physical body. The way you can heal yourself alone. I had pains and like my lower back pains, and I managed to make them go away. Over like 3 days, because I just knew that how it worked. It's just not just a simple matter of fixing your broken bones, but this was just almost like arthritic pains, very painful pains, and it's just like lower back pains like most people have when they turn middle-aged. And I just managed to make it go away without the use of any pills today, and I don't have any. And I don't want to be on pills or anything else. And like I said to you before, I never had surgery, and I don't intend to have any, and I don't really, fear the age. This is exactly what my daughter has been talking to me about. I've asked her, or she even asked me about, death and, mortality and all of that. And I said, well, people die. That's the way we are made, like today. And she said, I don't believe we'll ever die again, when I grow up. That's what she said to me. And that was a very powerful statement. And not because she was afraid of dying herself, but, she truly believed that based on what she knew, that the way we perceive life is going to be very different in the coming years. And in our lifetime, in your lifetime, that we're going to be seeing some changes that will completely, radically change the way we live and we breathe the air and we use the energy around us and within us. So this is what keeps me going. It's nothing else. It's not about transhumanism and trying to change, my DNA through therapies and gene therapies or whatever. It's simply through whatever we can access around us. And becoming part of that is very important. And when I connect with people who are genuinely believing that this is the right way to do it and to go, they understand that. They feel it, they live it themselves. They've been on the same journey for years and way before I did. And it's overwhelming, and it's nice at the same time to go through this and to meet those people, because you have this connection that the more networks we create around that, the more we can change the collective consciousness to access the universal consciousness that we're all part of anyway. And that's the way we can change our world. It's truly by embracing that change, not by fearing it. And I can't live in that fear for that same principle. So the materialistic life that I have is just an aspect of the greater picture that we have to go through, and so be it.
Is mankind safe? Are they, or are we
yes.
on an up and up swing with this?
Universe. No, we are part of the big universe. And
I understand that.
I know. Yeah.
Sorry, I understand that, but I mean, let's face it. I mean, the way the governments of the world have covered up this entire subject, a lot of people don't feel safe with any sort of negative ET agenda that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't say that there would not be any casualties, but at the same time, we cannot let them control our lives the same way as they try to interact with mine. I've been seeing Draco reptilians who attacked me, who did a psychic attack, and on my people as well, people I work with. And I can tell you that this is real. It's not just an illusion or something that David Icke would talk about, to make people scared. I don't say that, the Queen of England and all of that are part of the same agenda or are Draco themselves in disguise. But what I'm saying is that the Draco race does exist, that they do work with secret societies, that they are aware of them and their rituals are also part of that. This is a very low level type of reptilian agenda that is very negative, but also is part of us, all of us. Like we all have that brain, that reptilian brain that leads us to war because of our ego. And once you start inserting the Kundalini energy to it, which is also reptilian, by the way, then you start realizing that you have that survival instinct that takes over. And when you say, are we safe? Well, I think thanks to that alone, we can be safe because we can survive. And it's in our genes to survive. At any cost, any way possible, we want to survive. And I think, we are in a race right now. If we don't have the dinosaurs, I guess we are on the top of the chain right now. And we've been proving it for the last, few thousands of years. And hopefully, we can keep doing it, but with a very different view of the universe, not just the world, but the universe, which would make us more part of the ET races that are out there. And that's what they're counting on. So to know if we are safe, yes, I think like I said, we are the final genetic mutation of the ETs themselves, because we believe we represent a whole new definition paradigm to their existence. Some of them, we are their ancestors. Because again, space and time is something we conceive on this planet, but if you look at the Pleiadians, for example, they may be people from our future, and they might see us as, their future selves. Right?
And I could see that, and I could understand that happening. But the safety of people on this planet is what is most concerning. And with less than 4 minutes to go here before we got to say goodnight to you, when you look at disclosure, the casualties that you talk about that could happen on this planet, is that as a result of the extraterrestrials, or is that as a result of the stupidity of the governments of the world hiding the secret?
Neither or. I think it's to do with natural disasters. And, we live on this very fragile world, and we've been fortunate enough to live within that, stability on the continent, despite the few earthquakes here and there. And nothing like what happened 10,000 years ago with the Ice Age and before that. We didn't have the big cataclysms that they suffered from. So I think, we've been fortunate enough to live through that, but it doesn't mean it's going to be remaining constant forever. So, we just need to adapt to whatever circumstances that are arising from those changes. We are talking about, climate change, but also we are talking about fracking. We are talking about, all the, chemicals and all the stuff that we are creating that are harming ourselves, harming us and our planet and our drinking water and everything else. So I think, in a way, disclosure is designed to address those issues, but also in a deeper fashion is to address our future survival, for this planet, but also off planets. I think the biggest agenda that the government has today is, well, let's not really so much focus on what's on the planet, but let's focus on what we can do elsewhere, which is foolish, because to me, I know that we can fix and we can change what's already on this planet. It's just a matter of addressing those concerns in a safe manner without creating chaos within ourselves. So, if you see like a big disaster happening, you have people rioting and creating this completely chaotic atmosphere that would be far away from being part of a society. And I guess this is what we have to face within ourselves. But if we awake from this barbaric mentality, we will be able to prevail safely, addressing the changes on this planet with the new technologies in a safe manner, because simply we'll be more awake And it doesn't mean I would be fully awake or fully prepared, but at least we'll be on the right path and right agenda to then go off planets and being safe for other ET races, because currently they do not see us as being safe. They have seen that threat from the Lemurians and the Atlanteans in the past, even from from humanity in the times of Noah. They won't do that again. But to them, this is their last attempt. So whatever we do with it is also within our own power. So it's in our hands. We can either help it or we can ignore it. It's up to us.
My friend, we only got about a minute left with you. Tell everybody where they can find NSUHO.
Well, NSUHO is NSUHO.com. So on the internet, they can also find it on YouTube. I will be doing more interviews geared up towards disclosure, but also new technologies on NSUHO on my YouTube channel. I will do the best I can to update whatever I have on my own. But definitely this is the best places to reach me. On the website, they can contact me from the website directly on the contact us page, and I will do the best I can to answer the questions. And if they wish to help in any way, even giving names or people I should be contacting and interviewing, you can also mention a few names and contacts of these people on my website.
Wonderful, my friends. Sebastian, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio. We will definitely have you on again very, very soon. Love having you a part of it. Love you being a sponsor of Spaced Out Radio as well. And thank you on behalf of all our listeners for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Dave, for having me, and have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night. Everett Thiemer, Faux News Friday, coming up right now. It's Friday night, which means we bring in Everett Thiemer from The Encounter and Faux News Friday. This is where we take you on a little bit of an educational tour of fake news and where not to listen to the news. But Everett, we got a weird situation happening out of Seattle tonight.
Yeah, that's unusual.
And I want to give a shout out to Mike on Twitter. If you go to my Twitter page, I actually shared them. He actually has posts from a reporter named Jimmy Thompson who released the archives of the radio chatter of this weird hijacking out of Seattle where an Alaskan Airlines Dash 8 was hijacked by an employee. And the gentleman ended up crashing the plane on an island out on the West Coast there. Nobody else was killed but himself. Weird story, my friend. I know we don't usually do real news on Fridays, but this one is just too odd.
It is, and I'm not entirely up to date on it. I know that he did hijack it. I know that he crashed it shortly afterwards. Was the crash intentional?
Well, apparently he says, and I'm just paraphrasing here, that he knows the pilot knew he had this is what he said to Radio Control. He knew he had a lot of people that cared for him. It's going to disappoint them to hear that he did this. He would like to apologize to each and every one of them. He's just a broken guy with a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now. Very, very odd. They tried to talk him back, but he was just like, nope. I'm out of here.
That's horrible. That's horribly sad, too.
Very, very sad. And at first, when you see stories like this, that an employee hijacks an airplane and starts flying it around just for the sake of it, you have to wonder, is that real? Is that fake? Because right now, Everett, a lot of these news stories that pop up like this, the way fake news has been going around the last year or so, you really don't know whether it's real or not when it first comes out.
You don't, and I think we've proven that a couple of times where we've reported, even the other day, about the two gentlemen that escaped to go to Wacken, the Wacken Open Air Festival. Turned out that while it wasn't entirely fake, it really wasn't the story that was originally reported. And that came from and was run by first some German mainstream media, and then others picked it up and it spread around the world before anybody really clarified it.
Yeah, that was very, very odd, that story. I'm still sad that one isn't real. Still sad that one isn't real.
It's sad, but I think it illustrates the difficulty in determining what real news is these days when even news sources are kind of cannibalizing each other, and something as mundane and as simple and, really it's not a world-shattering story, but it quickly spread around before anybody really confirmed it.
I know. But that's the problem with the internet. How much does the internet have to play on this? And how much fault does the internet take over the fake news crap that we have to deal with on a daily basis now?
I think the internet is really only a small part of it. Because if you take that story, for example, somewhere along the line, whether it be on the local level or the national level, somebody should have fact-checked that story. Somebody should have made a few phone calls to the police department, gotten some information, did a little bit of research, and verified it. So, that part is the fault, I guess, of the reporting outlets. And once it hits multiple mainstream outlets, how can you blame somebody for accepting it as fact or believing it when the one thing that so many of those of us fighting the fake news ideals, we typically say if you see a story and more than one place is reporting it, then it's more than likely legitimate.
Mm-hmm. I fully understand it, and especially if a big market radio or television or news channel or website picks it up, you want to have the ability that you can trust that source. Do you think it's a matter of the fact that a lot of media outlets have cut back on salary so much over the last 20 years, where veteran reporters are a rare commodity these days, or even veteran editors, that they're just not doing their homework with the younger, I don't care crowd because I'm only getting paid this much?
I think it's a little bit of that, but I also think that a big factor is the idea that everybody wants to be first. Everybody wants to break the story. And now you have more and more outlets that are kind of competing to get to the story quickly. So the whole idea is find an interesting story that's going to attract your audience, that's going to engage your audience, and get it up or get it printed or get it run. And then it seems like the idea of checking that story kind of comes as an afterthought.
Yeah, it's get it to the world first, worry about the true facts second.
Exactly.
Oh, it's annoying. What do you got for Fake News Friday or Faux News Friday today?
I think we have something that will offend every segment of your audience tonight.
Wonderful. Let's get to it. Is it the Justin Bieber lizard one?
Oh, that Justin Bieber. I don't know what's up with him, but he does look like a lizard now, doesn't he?
Yeah, apparently there is a video going around that is showing that when Justin Bieber was in court in Florida, his eyes changed from human to reptilian, so he's now considered a reptile.
But that's so easy to Photoshop, and when you look at the video,
it's terribly done.
It's even blurry. It's obviously manipulated. But what is interesting is look at how he's changed from, early Bieber to today's Bieber. I mean, he has in many ways almost seemed to try and reinvent or manipulate his own image, which isn't uncommon in the entertainment industry. But just look at, it's not a subtle difference. He's gone from cute little kid to, in a way, when I first saw the videos of him, recently, he almost has this like 80s hairband rocker metal image to him now, with the tattoos and the
bleached hair,
the bleached long hair. I guess it's just an effort to keep his career current and fresh, but it is an interesting look for him.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but it isn't about look. I mean, we also got to realize, what is he, 24, 25 years old? He came onto the world scene at 14 years old, just, in puberty, man. In puberty, So,
yeah, he's only a few years away from, serving donuts at Tim Hortons or something.
Oh,
either way, I just don't see two things. I don't see somebody like Bieber having a long and storied career. I don't see Bieber hopping on stage in 50 years like the Stones. But
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Jeff on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio just posted a picture of Justin Bieber, the reptilian, so you can see the eye change. It is so badly done. So badly done. Yet there are people in this world, Everett, who are buying that as fact.
And why? Why is it that so many politicians, so many entertainers, they all get labeled as this reptilian? What is the attraction to making these people appear to be or make them out to be some form of alien? I don't, unless it's just pick on the famous people, I don't see the attraction or even how it benefits anybody.
I agree. Don't get it. Okay, so the story that's going to affect all of us.
Oh, we've got a few of them here. Today, the New Yorker's Andy Borowitz released a report that apparently after the main part of Mike Pence's speech at the Pentagon, he went on to discuss the idea that the Space Force is needed to defend the United States against attacks from outer space gaze.
Are you kidding me?
In his announcement, Mike Pence said that, and this is an alleged quote, "I stand before you today that this country is under attack from outer space gaze. Only Space Force can protect us from their unimaginable evil." He then went on to detail a scenario where gay aliens by the thousands land in the U.S. in seemingly cute spacecraft and subvert life in America as we know it.
Oh, no.
Now, this Andy Borowitz writes for the New Yorker, and he's clearly labeled as a humorist and a satirist. So there's a couple of things with this. One, I don't think it's in that great of taste, but what scares me is how many people took this as fact, even though he's labeled in their humor section.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is people will look at that and say, oh my God, gay space aliens. It's honestly ridiculous. And at what point, you're right, the article is in poor taste. It really is. At what point, though, do we as society have to finally say, stop bringing up someone's color, stop bringing up their sexuality? Why do we got to make it an issue every single time? Why can't we just say, this person, 38-year-old Joe Smith or Jane Smith started a fire or whatever? Why do we have to say what their race is or their sexual orientation? Like, I'm so sick of that crap. Honestly, like the media has to grow up with that.
But I think this is a case of liberals, and I don't want to go too deep into the politics of all of this, but they are essentially using the idea that the conservatives, have some bigotry, and essentially they're using the bigotry that's geared towards them to kind of hand it back to the Republicans. I think that was the attempt, because let's face it, the idea of a vice president talking about gay space aliens, hopefully everybody sees that as a little bit ridiculous.
Joe in the chat room actually says, and to Mike Pence's defense, there are aliens out there that do some butt stuff.
Well, I think we can all admit that the aliens do a lot of butt stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe just not on each other.
Exactly. Let's move on.
Another story out of Washington at a cabinet meeting earlier today. President Trump, President Trump proposed a new Sea Force to go along with his Space Force. This would be a new branch of the military that would have ships and boats and soldiers, and it would defend and protect the interests of the United States on the high seas.
Oh my God.
During this cabinet meeting, as the president was speaking, cabinet members reportedly sat staring at each other silently, and nobody spoke up. But President Trump continued on that he also was going to propose a ground force and a force that is a combination of ground forces and sea force to augment some of these other forces.
The satire is big with this one.
Oh, this isn't fake news.
What?
I totally believe this.
Well, of course you do. You're into that stuff.
I mean, the idea of a sea force, as President Trump stated in the report, or in the meeting, the Earth is covered by like 70% water. We need to protect the United States' interest in that. We need to dominate it.
Of course. Of course we do. Haven't we already?
With what?
The Navy?
That's not the Sea Force, though. This would be the Sea Force.
Yes, the Navy.
How would that be different from the Sea Force?
Wouldn't they be the same thing?
They probably would be. But it is just to hear the idea. I mean, whether you like Trump or dislike Trump, I think we're all a little bit too politically correct. And the idea of a president sitting in a cabinet meeting saying something like that, that's funny.
I can see where that would be funny.
If this were 1989 and that was President Reagan, people would be laughing. Today,
Yes, they would.
Today, a lot of people were on both sides of the aisle supporting Trump in the idea of creating a sea force. Apparently, they were unfamiliar with the Navy. And then, of course, there were, the ones that were pointing out that the Navy already exists.
Oh, goodness. It just continues to get painful. I think we got
That's
time
what we're here for.
I think we got time for one more.
Excellent. Recently, I don't know if you're aware of it, the Vatican announced that they would no longer support the death penalty throughout the world.
Right.
Well, okay, they've gone on to revise that, and they've put in an exception. They are now going to allow the death penalty for any drivers who get into the left lane and drive slowly.
Finally, a cause I can get behind.
But even this is beginning to create a little bit of controversy, because now people are wondering if there'll be exceptions for things like that guy that, brings the guitar to the party and makes everybody listen to his songs. The people who insist on talking to you while you're in line at the checkout. There are conservative Catholics that want that exception. If they're going to make it for drivers in the fast lane, they would like it for some other things. So now again, there's going to be a big, long debate throughout the Catholic Church.
Well, I mean, I got caught behind one of those, fast lane drivers coming home from my nephew's funeral. And when I am doing 25 kilometers an hour up here, so about 17 miles an hour below the speed limit, I get a little frustrated with that.
I like the ones that you can be the only car on the road and you're going the speed limit or above, and they insist on pulling out in front of you.
Yeah,
there's no traffic behind you, but they have to pull out in front of you, and you have to slam on your brakes and slow down to about 20 miles an hour. And they do that all the time.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And it's, that person deserves to have 2 warnings. 1, their license revoked. And 2, they got to go away.
Well, the Catholic Church is reinstating their approval of the death penalty for those drivers.
Perfect. What about the people who eat with their mouth open at restaurants? Anything about that?
Has not been suggested yet, but we can put it on the list.
What about annoying vape people? Like, I don't mind people who vape, but there's always that person standing right in front of the door, and they're like vaping like every 3.5 seconds.
You're talking about me, aren't you?
No, I'm not talking about you.
I don't know. I think that those vape mods or machines, whatever they are, I think they are a fantastic invention. I use them between cigarettes, and I love them.
I don't have a problem with them. I really don't have a problem with them. Time and place, though. All right? Time and place.
One day for your health, you should try vaping.
Well,
before we go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, before we get to the thought of the Dave, there is one more that we have to touch on just really quickly, because today Pfizer Corp announced its introduction of a new mental disorder, and they also announced that they have a pill to cure it.
What is it?
The disease is called borderline dysmorphic personality disorder, and it could affect some 70% of the population. The important thing is that as soon as they discovered it, they have a prescription pill to cure it. Now,
excellent.
Now, the clinical trials of this new drug show that it has some side effects that include dizziness, drowsiness, nausea, anxiety, moderate to severe mood swings, weight gain, kidney damage, cardiomyopathy, strokes, depression, suicidal thoughts or actions, loss of memory, nightmares, fainting, and pregnancy.
Okay. Wonderful. Let's get on that one right off the bat. Let's get to the thought of the Dave. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question during the day on our social media pages, and we read your responses to the question because we love the audience participation. Today's Thought of the Dave: what role do you think consciousness plays in ufology? Let's get to some of your questions or answers, shall we? John states, I think a person has to be tuned in able to experience certain phenomena, example, UFOs, ghosts, etc. I don't know if I really agree with that one, John. I think that's part of the mystic of it all. Mysticism is that people who normally haven't believed have turned into believers because they've had that experience. Robin jumps in. For a person or persons to have an experience, they need to be focused on to be able to one or else it won't happen. Same with ghosts. I believe you are certain that you will, or you are going to have an experience and stay focused on it. It will happen because it will find you. Keith jumps in. I don't think anyone has to be tuned in to see a UFO any more than they need to be tuned in to see a Boeing 747. I also don't believe that anyone needs to be tuned in to see a ghost or apparition. We'll see you tomorrow night during our ghost hunt. If anybody shows up because of the smoke. Oh, it's terrible up here, Everett. Terrible.
Is it?
Oh, dude.
When's it going to end?
Hopefully soon. Well, we're supposed to get some rain tomorrow and Sunday, and then back to like 30-plus degrees, which is, or 30 degrees, which is, what, about 84 degrees, your temperature? All right.
That's
brutal. Brutal. Eugene. Consciousness is half or more of the UFO abduction scenario. This experiences usually occur so far on the very edge of consciousness that they are often barely or vaguely remembered. And the more a person or experiencer is tuned in, the clearer the paranormal reception will be. Very, very interesting. Eric jumps in, according to intelligence, pretty big one. Keith Bradley, Reverend Keith jumps in. Consciousness is in direct proportion to the number of gin and tonics consumed. Where ufology comes in, I have no idea. Reverend Keith, come on. Reverend Keith, shame. Few Hail Marys for you, even though you're Methodist. William Lawrence, Bill Lawrence, former guest on this show. 2 words, quantum physics. Everything is connected. Sylvia, hi Sylvia, I know you're listening, because you told me you were. Sylvia jumps in and says some people have more psychic intuition than others. Until others are informed about what is not normal, they will continue to be in the herd. Those of us who have experienced weird stuff continue to want more and more experiences. It's a matter of opening up your mind to accept the abnormal and weird and not cut it off as impossible or not possible. We feel anything is possible. That's why we continue to believe. That's awesome. Sylvia all of a sudden pops up on my Facebook Messenger. I am still listening. Yay, Sylvia. Yay. All right, let's get to Chuck. Chuck jumps in. While I do think it's very important, like all intangibles, it can't be proven, so it's useless as any kind of proof. So I guess I'll take it for what it's worth. David. The proven alien telepathic ability or technology to manipulate human consciousness or conscious awareness automatically renders any subjective interpretations by experiencers of the role of the consciousness in the phenomenon highly suspect. All of the woo, well, that's going to make Mr. Skeptic happy. The word woo was used. All of the woo that attaches to this issue and the very question itself is a distraction from real ufology, and deliberately so on the part of the extraterrestrials. Oh, he's making the aliens seem as the bad guys. We got one more. I'm going to give it to Andrew here. Andrew says, that's a great question and probably at the core of this inquiry. In some cases, we may be witnessing advanced dark projects which are quite human in origin, but possibly in the other circumstances, we might be experiencing something very different. That difference might be how consciousness can conjure our very reality, our belief in what we think we are seeing. Thank you, Andrew, for wrapping it up, and thank you, Everett Themer. Tell us where the Encounter Online can be found.
People can find the Encounter at facebook.com/the Encounter, SOR, the Encounter Online.
Perfect. We will talk to you on Monday, my friend. This weekend, Tessa Nicole Thomas comes in to host Spaced Out Weekend while I'm off finding my Zen and Chi. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Don't forget, you could get tickets right now for the Caribou Paracon, the first annual, presented by Spaced Out Radio, September 28th through 30th. Grant Cameron is our featured speaker. Go to questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Scroll down. Get your tickets right now. Questers.ca. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Thank you for everyone making it a fine week, whether you're listening at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. Big thanks to everybody listening on Spreaker. Your chats have been amazing. Great snark this week on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and some great familiar faces in the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thanks for sharing the show, telling your friends, and doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night, because together, my friends, we own the night. I'll talk to you on Monday. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.
1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you.